I see that there are 17 participants still to be assigned, so we're going to hang out here for a couple of minutes and make sure that they find their way in. I think when we get it down to 1 or 2 unassigned participants, then I can jump in. And you should feel free to unmute yourself. It looks like it's just going to be a few of us, so no reason to stand on formality. Hi, Margaret, how are you?
I go by Peg. I thought I had changed it, but still Margaret's showing up.
Very good. Thank you, Peg. And there's the inimitable Van Gilmer.
And I'm joining you from northwestern Illinois, out in Galena.
Oh, wonderful. I'm so glad you found your way to us.
I have a friend who lives in Winnetka, so
Oh,
she posted it.
wonderful. I unmuted you, Van.
Oh, thank you. I didn't realize it.
Thank you for your beautiful introduction this evening.
Well, you know, I couldn't get on. I went all over the house. I could not get my computer on. I actually played on my phone when I finally figured out another way to get in. Now I'm on my computer.
Yeah,
I had no internet service, I guess.
I thought it had to be something like that.
Yeah.
There's Rabbi Ike. Good to see you, sir.
And hi, Jeff.
And thank you for the Cliff's notes on Jewish literature. You did a nice job. You did a really good job of explaining. Okay, this is the Torah. This is the I mean, all of the major volumes were well described.
Thank you.
When you talked about the Encyclopedia Britannica, that was one of those pain pleasure moments, because I'm among those that tried to recycle my Encyclopedia Britannica.
Yeah.
And you cannot do it. They will not be accepted by libraries. They're not accepted by schools. They're not accepted by used booksellers. Nobody wants them.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you have to basically reduce it to paper and put it in the recycling, which is the most painful thing in the world, because in the 1960s or 70s, for your parents to acquire an Encyclopedia Britannica was a major investment. And it was considered the pinnacle of a home library. You know, to be able to own such a thing in your home was a great advantage to give to your children. And so, you know, to get rid of your 1967 Encyclopedia Britannica is a very painful thing. But unfortunately, you just reach the point where you cannot keep accumulating everything from, you know, your past life.
As I said, I mean, I'm carrying the great Jewish books right here, you know, and
Yeah.
more often I look there than I do on the ones that are on my shelf at work, especially this year, because they're at work and I'm at home.
And I guess you may be aware that Encyclopedia Britannica dropped its pay gate. So now you can go and read the greatest articles from the encyclopedia basically for free. And I think that they hope to incent you to subscribe to some of their paid services. But yeah.
One thing that we did is we donated a whole set to a prison in Michigan. Many times prisons don't have access to electronics and computers and things. So something to think about.
Good to know. Well, I appreciate your joining me. I'm just going to run through a few of the tips and tricks that I have learned along the way, trying to dispose of things like the Encyclopedia Britannica and other things that are kind of vexing when it comes to figuring out how to handle them. And fortunately, there's more and more resources available today. Let's see, it's a little tricky sometimes to get the chat panel out of the way of your controls for PowerPoint so that you can use the buttons on your screen. Okay, can everybody see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. And we'll stay off mute. And I don't even think we'll need to use the chat for questions given the small group size. So just feel free to interrupt me. Again, I don't pretend to be an expert on recycling, but through self-education and the desire to figure out how to handle the things that can't go into my recycling bin, I have learned a few tricks along the way. So some of the things I'll just touch on tonight are the ones that are actually the most common issues, which are household chemicals, latex paint. Is strangely enough, one of the things that people show up with the most at recycling centers, and which always gets turned away. Electronics, which is something we all grapple with, batteries, light bulbs, major appliances, and then things that work, with your car. I'll let someone else into the session here. Oops, excuse me. So right off the bat, I think household chemicals is one of the things that, we all recognize intuitively don't belong in our trash, but then again, where do they belong? So cleaning products and many oil-based paints and varnishes and thinners, flammable liquids, including gasoline, a lot of garden chemicals, which we intuitively know should not go into our water waste stream, and even some personal care products and medications. It's illegal actually to dispose of these by dumping them on the ground or in drains or anywhere else. It's irresponsible and illegal. So the good news is that household chemical waste collection programs have gotten started now, and these can be reprocessed or reused in many instances, or they can be put into containers which are safe for disposal. And so the Illinois EPA has approved a number of recycling and reuse facilities. So if you go to the solid waste site, and I'll give you the link later for your area, you will learn about the locations that accept household chemical waste and that run collection events or even send around mobile pickup units. When they do these collections, they take all of the things that I'm showing here. So it's just about almost anything you can think of. The only thing they won't take in the way of batteries are alkaline batteries. And the only thing they won't take in the way of paint is latex paint, as I mentioned before. It's worth pointing out that motor oil is readily accepted at most parts retailers. I do still change the oil on my car, and I collect lots and lots of used oil, and then I take it over to, in my case, Advance Auto, but just about any auto parts place will take that back. So these HCW, or household chemical waste collections, are wonderful places that will accept these things. And so if you put a box in your garage and you collect the containers of these items, you will have a place to be able to take them. So resist that temptation to put them somewhere else. By the way, you'll notice here that compact fluorescent lamps and tubes usually are accepted during HCW collections. They have mercury in them. And the problem with mercury, of course, is it's highly toxic, and even small doses. So usually 7 or 8 bulbs at a time will be accepted at these collection sites. Usually not the really long tubes, but more frequently the spiral, compact CFLs. Those are readily accepted. If you do have any of the old long ones, you can usually call in and ask, how you should dispose of those. So this is, this deck will be put on our website, but these are the partners that are specific to paint. Paint is a big deal, and there are people that actually reprocess and recycle paint. So these are some resources if you have, a fair amount of paint. I'll address latex paint specifically. You can see one site here is only dealing with latex paint. Latex paint's a funny thing because it's not high in VOCs, not specifically very toxic, yet a lot of it does end up in landfills because it can't be recycled unless you find a specific latex recycling solution. It's the most common material delivered by citizens at the solid waste handling sites, and it's the thing that's turned away the most. So I was excited to find that there is something called e-paint recycling, which collects at most Ace Hardware locations in our region. They actually will take paint and then they sort it and filter it and tint it and repackage it, and then they sell it. They sell it for 14 bucks a gallon, mostly to institutional users. And so far they have kept 1 million cans out of the landfill, which is a pretty cool thing for what was really a small startup, luckily right here in Northern Illinois. So when they say no open cans, they mean, everything has to have a lid, it has to be properly sealed, but it can be a partial can for sure. I thought it was pretty funny that they have figured out how to formulate this palette of colors from old paint, and you got to love the names. It's very, very Great Lakes here. We have Mackinac Green and Petoskey Stone. Makes me want to go on vacation. Robin's Belly, that had to be, I think, one of the most compelling names. But yeah, they have figured out that these colors can be derived from certain combinations. And they say, by the way, that the paint is very high quality because it's higher in solids than store-bought paint. So it's a better coverage and very good quality paint. So who knew? But I thought that was pretty neat. So Ace Hardware, good place to turn in your paint. And then these are some of the customers that buy their paint. I thought that was very encouraging to know that people are taking advantage of low-cost recycled paint. So there's some good news. If you have paints that are only about a third or less of paint, you can just open up the lids and then dry them out. I have an old bookshelf in my garage that always has a few cans that are in the drying mode of latex paint. And after a few weeks, it's dried and cracked. The other solution that is acceptable to the solid waste collection sites, to put into your trash, is to solidify it. And they will, like my service, which is Lakeshore here in Deerfield, they will accept a few cans at a time. And they say to, open it up, put in some either kitty litter or oil dry, or even sand or shredded newspaper, and get it to where it's really thick. And then if you leave that out for a little while, it will solidify, and then they will accept it, put the lid back on, and put it in the trash. So any questions about paint? Again, the oil-based and thinner type products, those can go to the household chemical waste collections. Electronics is, for me, one of the problems. I always have a partly disassembled VCR or something in my basement. I have the things that my grown sons left behind. And again, intuitively that you shouldn't be putting a lot of that stuff in the landfill. And in fact, Illinois, right on top of this, they actually established a ban on certain electronic devices like televisions and monitors and computers. You're not even allowed to put them in the trash. And then on top of that, Governor Rauner a few years ago signed into law the Electronics Recycling Act, which forces now, don't like to use the word force, but has enabled each county to establish a recycling point for electronics. And there's a convenience standard that must be met. In other words, it can't be, once every 6 months on a rainy Tuesday. They have to make it available frequently. So all of the things you see here, which is just about everything you can imagine that's electronic, is okay for these electronics collections. Just as a point of interest, the ones that are in boldface are the ones that are specifically illegal to put into your regular trash. So about the only thing that that you can put in your regular trash are like small household appliances, like a toaster or an old blender or something like that. But everything else that you see here can go right on to the electronics collections. And The things that are not okay are refrigeration devices. They have to be sent out with white goods collections because of the refrigerants. Batteries, which we're going to talk about. Broken glass, which I think is kind of obvious. They don't want discs. Again, a dehumidifier is essentially a refrigeration product. Electrical fixtures, they mean things like lighting fixtures, which aren't really that electronic. There's the light bulbs again. Bring those to your HCW collections, not to electronics. And then again, there are separate programs for most of these other things, for white goods, for chemical waste, for large appliances, for paint. Then there's these weird things like, we'll talk about them a little bit later, but like fire extinguishers aren't recyclable. Neither are smoke and fire detectors. So there's special things to do with those oddball items. But overall, everything on this page that is not acceptable in electronics does have a recycling resource. The only ones are the ones with asterisks that are identified as not having, there's no special collection program for broken glass. There's no special collection program for light fixtures, and nothing for your toaster or wooden speaker cabinets. Sorry, Van. But yeah, it's amazing that most of these categories are covered in some way by a recycling resource. So for the folks, and this is apologies to Peg, who is in Northwestern Illinois, but Peg, there is a location for you too. Just have to look it up. But for most of us in our region, either you're in Cook County, so you can go to Swank and Winnetka, or you're in Lake County and you can go to Highland Park. And most of these, as you can see, have a day of the week that you can go over. And then they also have certain weekend days. Plus, as you've probably seen in your community, it's not uncommon for them to set a pop-up event, a one-day recycling event somewhere in your, like maybe at the farmer's market, or maybe a Boy Scout collection or something like that. Yeah, yes.
Yeah, actually, the city of Galena had once a month where they'd have somebody come in and pick up the electronic items.
Yeah.
With the COVID, that stopped, but the place that does the recycling is about 14 miles away.
Okay, that's good to know. The one in Lake County is nice because they'll also take textiles. They have a shoe program. They will, hardly anybody takes polystyrene, but they will take polystyrene except for packaging peanuts, just because if you ever spilled any of those, you'll never get them all. And they will also take fluorescent light bulbs right then and there. So that's kind of a convenience. They also take some of those other hard to recycle items. Clothing and textiles, it's amazing. 95% of what they bring in, they can reprocess. If some of the items are donated, but a lot of them are, shredded and processed for fiber that is used in all kinds of products. This is a very high efficiency rate on recycling of clothing and textiles, and the same with shoes.
Greg.
Yes.
Is there something going on that educates us about this? I'm asking that because I'm probably supposed to be in jail. I've thrown so much of this stuff out.
Oh, I know. And
I didn't know.
And I'm only laughing out of self-reflection, because I'm really the same. I mean, I used to do terrible things. I would sneak away into the corner of the yard and pour gasoline on the ground and things like that. Not because I would, wanted to do anything bad, just because I just was so ignorant. I just had no idea that A, it was not the right thing to do, and B, that there were resources. And as I mentioned, there's only a handful of things that you cannot get rid of in a proper way. And like broken glass, well, okay, use double or triple bags, guys, and protect the trash collectors, but that's about all you can do. So yeah, I hear what you're saying, Van. And it really was illuminating the more I looked into this, to find out how many resources there are. And at the end, I'll give you some sort of master resources.
And I also, Greg, I also asked the question because I recently put a long fluorescent, I didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
Long fluorescent light out in my bin,
Yeah,
and they took it.
yeah. And a lot
I'm
of
thinking
this,
they're not just leave it there, and then I would know. Okay, no, they don't
yeah.
take that.
And a lot of the solid waste haulers, they don't want to create controversy for their neighborhood clients. And so they sometimes take things they know they shouldn't take. In fact, they frequently take things they know they shouldn't take because they just don't have the time to get out of the truck and say, hey, van, get this bulb out of here. So, there's unfortunately not a lot that, that you can do about that. But a bulb here and there is not going to make a huge difference. But yeah, there are those resources. Now, batteries is one of those things that I always thought that I could recycle, especially like alkaline batteries. But it turns out that there are no recycling processes yet for these single-use alkaline batteries. And the EPA has determined these as being non-hazardous. So this is one of those things I'm giving you permission to throw away, but don't throw them in the fire. Now I'm going to show you something. If you can see my picture, see my giant jar. It's marked battery recycling. This is out of my garage, and I didn't realize it's full of batteries. And I didn't realize until I read up on this that you should never put these things in a group because they're all contacting each other, positive and negative. And if there's enough juice in some of these batteries, these could start arcing and sparking and causing maybe even a fire. So after we leave the session tonight, I'm going to separate these. I'm going to put them in small bags, and then I'm going to throw them in the trash. Some people who are really paranoid will put tape over the contact ports. So alkaline batteries, forget about it. But, and if you are a battery diehard, sorry for the pun, there are some people that actually do accept alkaline batteries if you want to make the trip. So there are some people that specialize in that. And there are some of these battery retailers like Batteries Plus that will accept them. So you do have to go a little bit further out of your way. But other batteries, anything rechargeable, and some of the long life like lithium batteries, they can be turned in HCW sites. So when you get there, be sure to mark them. These are the rechargeables, and they will take them. They just won't take the alkaline batteries. In addition to HCW sites, Home Depot, Lowe's, and Best Buy, most of these large retailers will accept rechargeable batteries as well. As well as cell phones, which usually have embedded rechargeable batteries. So you can look up the closest drop-off location for battery and cell phone, rechargeable batteries and cell phones at this website. But yeah, Home Depot and Lowe's, pretty easy to find.
Actually, I'm pretty proud of our small town. For years, the city, you could drop off the batteries at the city. They have a tube where you could drop them, or at the police department, as well as medications, a place to drop them off at the police department. And once a month, they incinerate.
That's excellent.
Old medication. So to find out where to do this, everybody gets a bill for water, sewer, garbage. And they print information on the back there and the website, etc. So yeah, we're very fortunate. I didn't realize that other people were having to go so far, but there might be other cities that have those.
And I believe you're right, and that's where you keep your eyes open. You do start finding more collection, opportunities for all kinds of things.
Yeah,
including light bulbs. Like I have seen some hardware stores that will collect CFLs. So fluorescent bulbs, and of course these are now being kind of slowly outmoded by LEDs. Fluorescent bulbs do contain mercury, and they should not be put into the regular trash. But again, they can go in the household chemical waste collections. Other bulbs, the good old-fashioned incandescent bulbs, halogen bulbs, LED bulbs, they do not contain mercury, and they do not have any reusable or recyclable elements. So those are destined for the landfill. White goods, I think you all pretty much know that if you put white goods out and call your waste hauler, they almost always have in the contract that they have to accept major appliances. Although if you just put one out at the curb anyway, a lot of towns like mine have metal recyclers that comb the area on the days leading up to trash day. And a lot of times they will beat the waste hauler to it, because there's a lot of good stuff in a washing machine or a refrigerator. There's plenty of metal, there's plastics. So the value of the components of an appliance are fairly valuable. So they're disassembled. Hazardous things are taken out, and then the other components are shredded and sorted and graded. Also, appliance retailers, of course, will haul away old appliances when they deliver new ones, and then they actually pocket a little bit of money for that. So again, these nuts are not really that challenging, and there's a good supply chain for recycling those. Tires, a really bad problem if they are allowed to pile up in the wrong places. We've all seen video of tire fires, which can burn for weeks because the fire gets so hot. And tire dumps are notorious for mosquito breeding, because they fill partially with rainwater, and then they are just absolutely perfect mosquito breeding environment. So for all these reasons, tires may not go into landfills. It is illegal. Tire retailers are obligated to recycle tires, but only in exchange for new tires. So therefore, if you just run into Pep Boys with old tires, they will charge you usually between $3 and $6 a disposal fee, but it's the responsible thing to do. I usually have some old tires, snow tires, or tires that I took off of a car and thought I was going to do something with. So if you have those old unmounted tires to dispose of, call up your closest tire center and make sure that they'll take them. But certainly don't try to put them in your trash. Auto batteries are actually worth a good deal of money because of the lead components, and they're worth $10 if you take them to either AutoZone or Advance. They'll give you a $10 gift card. Usually you're probably turning one back in to get the $10 from Walmart, because they'll charge you a core charge when you buy a new battery, and they expect to take an old one back in trade. The good news is that because battery recycling is well established, almost all lead acid batteries are being recycled properly, but we do play a role in that. I don't know if anyone here is still replacing car batteries. I just did it for my wife's car a couple of months ago. And this kind of goes to Peg's point. There's a surprising number of specialized collections that go on at retailers and medical offices. Like my medical office has a place for sharps. Walgreens down the road has a place for prescription drugs. So keep your eyes peeled for places that deal with, like your fire department might take old fire extinguishers. Oftentimes they will take the smoke detectors. Only the ones with ion chambers are radioactive. The photocell type, not a problem. They can go in the regular trash. The back of the smoke detector indicates whether it needs to be handled specially, and the law requires the label to indicate where to return them. But again, if you go to an Ace Hardware, something like that, they'll often take them. Drugs, we talked about. Sharps, we talked about. Sharps have to be handled carefully. Eyeglasses, there's all kinds of collections for various charities that accept eyeglasses. Shoes and clothing, I think we talked about. Of course, there's always Goodwill, and there's nothing wrong with that. They actually take a fair amount of the things they bring in and sell them for textile fiber recycling. Only a certain percentage ends up on the rack. Either way, you can feel good that at least they're not going into the landfill. There are some specialty retailers that will take those DVDs and CD-ROMs off of your hands. That's one of those things that's worth Googling. Same thing with videotapes. So the point of this slide is just to, kind of, become aware of some of the specialized resources that are around us for some of these oddball oddball items. So I'm getting ready to wrap it up here. Sharps, I think you probably know that there are these specialized Sharps containers, and these are, available from a lot of medical or pharmaceutical firms. You can also just use a heavy, like a Tide bottle, and then tape the top of it shut, mark it Sharps, and throw it in the trash. Well, they are going to cut us off apparently in another minute. Was there anyone that had a quick question before I wrap it up?
I have one suggestion. That is, we just talked to our fire department today about fire extinguishers, and they said to vent it. And then we could throw it away, but they didn't want a pressurized canister. They do expire, by the way. Ours expired after 12 years.
Oh, I've got one under my kitchen sink that's older than that, so I better.
Yeah.
Good to know. So these are the websites that you should go to learn about more resources in your area. They're incredibly detailed sites, except for the last one. That one will